Hey everyone, my name is Michael. I am a product manager on Alexa. It's ironic that I work on a voice forward product when I have a speech impediment. So maybe that's why I've been drawn to CV. But I've been at Amazon now for about 5 years. Started out more on the operations and hardware sides of the business, and then more recently have moved over to software where I lead CV for Alexa. Many of you may not even know that the Echo devices have cameras in them, but you can see that we do actually launch and build the Echo Show, which is a newer version than the Echo and the Echo Dot. And so these products do have cameras in them, and as a result are able to do a lot of really interesting things around your home. And that's where I come into play. So I lead our vision around CV and what those features look like from the end to end. What I hope to do today is to give you all an inside look at how we build those features, what goes into thinking about that, starting with working backwards from the customer, setting crisp requirements, so turning that vision into a reality with those, managing the hardware and schedule challenges that come with that of actually building on an Echo device, and then making the right trade-off decisions so that we can build a product and a feature set that delights both the customer and is good for the business. So I'll talk to you first a little bit about what we've already launched. So last year we launched 3 features, hero features, including Visual ID, which I'll go into more details in today, Smart Motion, and Occupancy Routines. Visual ID is our version of facial recognition. And it allows us to recognize you and your family members in the home so that we can provide personalized and more relevant content. Right now, these Echo devices are meant as communal devices, but we're trying to make them more personal and thus more relevant to you. Smart Motion is a feature unique to the Echo Show 10, and it allows the whole screen to move with you, keeping you in the field of view, whether you're on a video call and you're moving around or you're trying to follow along to a recipe in the kitchen. It's really useful. Some people found it a bit creepy, but I think we launched it in a way that really hit the mark. And then lastly, Occupancy Routines. This one is super useful. You walk into a room, the camera detects that a person is there, and we do things like turn on the lights, start your favorite music playlist. And on the other hand, if there's no one in the room, we'll save energy by turning off lights, turning down the temperature. Very, very useful feature. And all of these use different CV models. For Visual ID, we're using a 2-part model. First, we're detecting a face using a bounding box, and then we're recognizing a face based on the images that you provide when you enroll in the feature. It's a really simple thing. You just look at the camera, up, right, down, left, and then we turn that into a vector and are able to match that whenever a face enters the field of view. So, getting into the details a little bit. The key when we're launching features is to work backwards from the customer. I heard it said earlier on the panel when we were talking about safety and whether camera and LiDAR, what's going to be good enough, what's right, what about cost, what about this, and it was a really powerful point of we need to figure out what is the right safety level and then work backwards from that. That same principle applies when we're trying to build CV features for Alexa. What is the vision? What is going to delight the customer? And then work backwards from that. We do something at Amazon called the press release and frequently asked questions, and it's a way to write out what the feature will look like when it launches, and you do that a year before, 2 years before, and it really forces you to think about the customer experience and what that must look like. What are they going to ask about? What are they going to say? And you write all of that down, and then that's what you go and build. And so it's so important to align on what the vision will be. And how you get there, the details of how you get there are much less important. So the thing that I like to say, I think I probably stole this from Bezos, is be stubborn on the vision, but flexible on the details. And in order to get to that vision, once you've aligned your PR and written all of that out, you have to turn that into requirements. And that's really how you then execute on the vision. For Visual ID, I just have a couple of the requirements listed here. I think I had a 50-page document that listed out all of these different things, but I'll go through some of the most important ones here. And it's around recognition. So the false reject rate. How often will you not be recognized when you walk in front of the camera? Now, ideally that would be 0, but that's not always going to happen, and so there has to be a rate that is set that's based on data and benchmarked against competitors that the team drives to meet. On the same hand, there's the false accept rate. How often when you walk in front of the camera, or I should say when you don't walk in front of the camera, will we accidentally recognize you? That one can have other privacy implications, so it's a little dicey. Then there's the miss ID. How often do we recognize you as someone else in your family, whether that's your child, your wife, your husband, your roommate? Looks really, really bad when that happens, so we have to keep that to a minimum. And it's also hard because we're using a simple camera to do this. When you look at something like the iPhone with the Face ID, they have a depth sensor in there. It's a better camera than we use. They have a lot more to work in the dark. So we're already at a disadvantage in the customer's mind because they don't know any of that and they don't really care either. They want to be recognized quickly, accurately, and regularly. So that's a challenge as well. And then user perceived latency. Now there's a bunch of different blocks of latency here. We have the recognition that is going on that my CV team cares about the most because that's what they can actually do something about. But there's more to it than that. It's once they're recognized, we have to make a round trip to the cloud where we are fetching the personal information, whether that's the personal calendar, personal news events, music, and then sending that back to the device where it's then rendered, and then the customer sees their personal content. And that's what I care about measuring because that's the end-to-end user perceived latency. So it's important to think that way as well, like not just about how long recognition will take. And then lastly, there's the detection range. That one requires thinking about the average room size, where people place their Echo devices. It's not going to be acceptable if it only works at 4 feet because most people are going to be walking through a room further from their device than that. So all of those things I have to think about, and come back to the overarching vision of quickly, accurately, consistently recognizing a customer and showing them personalized, relevant content. It has to come back to that vision. Hardware constraints. This one's fun, or not so fun, depending on your role in all of this. So when I was working on Visual ID, we were launching this on the Echo Show 15. That's the larger one that looks like a picture frame on your wall. And so I was able to influence the hardware there. I can say, hey, I need this much processing power, I need this much memory, I need this kind of a camera. But we were also launching it on legacy devices, ones that have already shipped. So in that case, I cannot influence the hardware. I'm limited by the processor on device, by how much memory there is, by the camera. All of that I can't change. And so we have to figure out a way to make Visual ID work on those products with hardware limitations already set. And that's not always easy. It's also a huge pain in the butt for my team because the cameras are different, so that requires training a new model. It means tailoring it to both of the cameras. It's a huge pain. Even some of the older devices that have a different camera, I had to make the call of, can we launch a subpar, or at least a version of Visual ID that doesn't meet the requirements that I have laid out? And I had to make the decision that no, we cannot launch this on all of our devices because the camera is not going to be good enough. We're not going to recognize you often enough. The detection range is much worse, and so on. So thinking through all of that is really, really important. And then as a product manager, if I am going to ask for more hardware in the sense of a better camera, low light sensing, more memory, I have to back up why it's worth that. And so that entails, things like, does the feature lead to more sales, a higher sales price? So if that's the case, that's great, that's easy. I can show directly that we're going to sell 100,000 more units, or I can charge $5 more, and that's going right into the bottom line. But oftentimes that's not the case, or it's really hard to actually prove that, or to get leadership to agree to that, because it's a very, very nebulous thing. Within Alexa, one of the metrics that we care about a lot is engagement. How often are you actually using the device? How often are you interacting with the features? Because when you use the device, we're happy, we win. We're not trying to make a whole lot of money on the actual hardware. We're looking to make money over time through your use of the device and features that go along with that. And so that's really important. We have some great data already on Visual ID where we are seeing higher engagement. So that's a big one. And then the last one is, can you actually charge money for the feature that you're launching? For Visual ID, the answer is no. We do not charge more for the feature, but there are features that we do offer, like Alexa Guard, where we are monitoring your home when you've left. We're looking if there's anyone there who shouldn't be there. We're listening for sounds of someone breaking the glass. We do charge money for that. So all of those variables have to come into play as you're trying to justify the increase in unit cost or BOM cost. Schedule. This is another one that's really tightly tied with hardware. When we were launching the Echo Show 15, we had a very tight deadline where we had to ship devices, get them to retail stores, get them to C's, where we store products before they get sent out on 1-day shipping, 2-day shipping at Amazon. And if we don't hit that date, then we miss the holidays, which is a huge loss to the bottom line, because that's when we sell most of our units. And so there is a really tight window where we have to be ready, we have to be code complete, we have to beta test, we have to do all of these things in time for the holidays. And so with that often comes some compromises, where if my team says that they need 5 months of data collection, and I say, well, you only have 3 months. What does that look like? How can we get more data to supplement what we need? How can we make sure that we're hitting fairness KPIs without taking that extra 2 months? And this is an area where there's some room for negotiation. If we feel like we can launch a feature that is, right at the bar, but it's maybe we wanted to do a little better, then we can think about, can we keep making improvements post-launch? The way that I think about it is, the launch date is not the finish line. It's really the start. So once we've launched, we're still going to iterate. We're still going to collect more data. And we recently rolled out a new model that is much better, blows away the KPIs. And that's because we had planned to keep improving after launch. And so all of these factors have to be weighed as we're thinking through the timing so that we can still hit those major business goals. The other thing just to point out, which is always fun on hardware, is that when we already have an Echo device that we're trying to integrate with, we have to make sure that the CV feature is not going to break or degrade anything else on device. So we have other metrics and KPIs around the overall device health, latency goals, performance, the wake word has to work well. If we break something like that, then it's a nightmare. That's a no-go. So we have to have the time to validate that we're not breaking anything else that lives on the device. Oftentimes, we're also launching a lot of new features at the same time. So it's almost like you're trying to land a plane while it's in the air. Whether it's a new CV feature, a new media feature, photos, display stuff, it can be very, very tough. And so you need to bake in the time to validate and test all of that. And that certainly takes some time, and oftentimes a lot of pain as well. Cloud versus edge. This is a really interesting one. I really enjoyed the talk this morning where the panelists were going through the pros and cons of building models in the cloud, on the edge, deploying models. This is one where it really is going to be unique to your use case. The pros and cons that apply in one industry may be very different for another. For Alexa devices, it is so important that we do as much as possible on the edge. We have a device that has compute and memory right there. If we can leverage that and keep the processing done locally, it's a really powerful marketing message that we can lean into for privacy. And that's exactly what we did on Visual ID. So we take the images of you while you enroll. They're kept locally on device. When we try to recognize you, we're matching that against those vectors, and it's all kept locally. So it's never sent up to the cloud. It's all local, and we really leaned into that with with the press, and it was very well received. We have to be careful on the Alexa side because it is, we are being trusted by customers to put a device in their home with ears and eyes, essentially, with microphones and a camera, and that's really, really important. And so, doing that, though, has cost as well. So, like I mentioned before, we have to add enough memory in order to store and run models locally. That's not cheap. The latency benefit, though, is another big one, and that's one that we can tout as well. We don't have to make that round trip back and forth to the cloud. So that's also very helpful. But this is one where I think for certain use cases, it actually may be better or more secure to keep things in the cloud. For us, even if that's the case, customers really, it really resonates with nothing leaves your device. We never get it, we can't see it, it's local, it's on device. And so more and more Apple keeps kind of leaning into that messaging as well. So I think customers will start to be more and more receptive there. So that's something that we're also thinking about and trying to do more and more. But like I said, it comes with real costs in the terms of dollars and cents. Trade-offs. So this is where a product manager can actually add value. I'm sure a lot of you have worked with PMs before and thought, like, what does this person actually do, and why are they taking up time, for meetings and keeping me busy when I should be actually doing work? This is one area where I think a PM actually adds value, and that's in making the right choices on things like performance versus cost versus privacy versus timing, schedule. And I talked about a bunch of these earlier, but things like, do you add cost for a better camera? If yes, why do you need it? Why? How many megapixels do you actually need? Can you back up with data? Why that's important? Same thing with memory. More memory, so multiple models can run concurrently. I talked about trying to reduce the time if you're able to move a little bit of the model development and data collection out. And then privacy and latency, those are big ones as well. What I think is so important, I mentioned earlier how focusing on the vision is what really matters, and how you get there, it really doesn't matter. The trade-offs and the details that I mentioned, I think, are more in that kind of details bucket. There are so many ways that you could launch a feature. There's no one right way. As long as you have the vision and you know that that's what you need to build, you get your team aligned and everyone knows what you're marching towards. How you get there doesn't really matter. I'll leave you with the Bezos quote: "Stubborn on vision, but flexible on details." Thank you.
Michael, great presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Are you open to take questions?
Sure.
All right. Any questions here? Here.
First question: if you have multiple Alexa devices in your house, if you teach one to identify you, do the others?
Great. Yeah. So right now the answer is no, and the reason is that we keep everything locally on that one device. You're trying to, that was a good one. Yeah, no. So, but that's a great point. I actually meant to mention that is a pain point for customers, but it's one that I thought was worth it because we can really lean in and say, hey, the reason that this one doesn't know you is because nothing has left that one Echo device. So it's tough. Yeah. No, but yeah. That's a good question.
If I may, as your neighbor, so I work at labs too, But the nature of job in labs is not working on production. So you mentioned that, I mean, the way you explained, it seems like you guys work on production kind of products. How does that work?
Yeah, so
Do you only innovate and pass it to the production team, or?
not anymore. I think so. So Amazon Labs started out as the place where we built the Kindle. It evolved. We did the Fire Phone, which everyone knows was not the best, but that actually turned into Alexa. It turned into some other things, and so it started out as like really tiny group. It's since grown a lot and is now thought of as more of like our hardware unit. So even though there is still some stuff that goes on there that I can't tell anyone about, I don't even know everything that happens there, but it has now also evolved into where we actually build hardware.
All right, good. So you had a question about computer vision?
I was wondering, because you're creating set of personalized system for individuals. If you have more than one person in the same room and they have two different schedules, so how will you?
Good question. So right now, how that works is that we take the person who walks in first and is recognized with high confidence first is who we then show the personalized content to. If they're both in the room, we will remain on that first person until they leave the field of view, and then we will have recognized the other person in the background, and then we can instantly show them their personalized content. Yeah.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
Do you foresee that over time you can probably pack more compute and more memory on the Echo device, so you will be less reliant on the cloud?
Hopefully, as the cost comes down, I hope that we can do that. But it is a constant debate as to how much cost do we put on the device versus relying on the cloud, and that it will change regularly with the market too. Memory prices have gone up a lot, which makes it even more costly. Yeah, we're thinking about that every day. Let me tell you that at least.
Great job, Michael.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.